Hey, what's up everyone? In this video, we will be creating a custom onboarding screen. The onboarding process that we will be making is very much inspired by the design you see in front of you. Kudos and credit to the Uptech team that uploaded this on UpLabs. I'm taking my own personal spin on it, essentially creating a onboarding flow for the Fun with Flutter YouTube channel. For those of you that just quickly wanted to jump in and see what the end design looks like, hold up for 10 seconds and just listen to what we will be covering in this video. The first is achieving this overflow for the page transitions. As you can see, the colors kind of overflow before you go to the next page. I'm achieving this by using data modeling instead of overlaying the layers, so that was interesting to come up with a solution for that. Next, I'm also making use of a custom painter to achieve the squiggly drawer you see on the right, and to also do the page indicators to draw what page we are currently on. And then there's obviously some animation going on. And then finally, I'm making use of the new provider state management workflow. So this was talked about at the recent Google I/O 2019, where they more widely introduced this as a suggested state management workflow. So for the provider state management, it is very easy to implement, and as this was quite a simple app to do, I figured it was a good way to introduce that new state management into my own apps. So yeah, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know in the comments if you have questions. Okay, before we begin with the coding, there's a couple of admin things we need to do. So this is the initial Flutter app. All we are doing is returning a text field that says hello. We are providing our own font, Montserrat, and then there are a couple of image assets. So in the pubsec.yaml, you can see we are including the font family, and we are including these image assets. Next, I created a new themes folder, and within the themes folder, I created this styles.dart file. So this will be our app theme. So all this does is it currently just sets different text styles for the different font weights. So if we jump back to main.dart, I'm importing this styles.dart file, and then for our material app, we can specify the theme. Hit save, and then you can see that the text has changed. Okay, next I created a new folder called screens. I'm creating different folders to structure our app. So currently there will only be one screen. It will be the onboarding screen. So how I'm designing this is if there are separate screens, we will create separate folders for each of these screens. So essentially within this onboarding folder, it will contain all of the widgets and everything that is associated to this screen. And in this onboarding.dart file, it's currently just a stateless widget that says hello in a censored widget. So within main.dart, what we can do is we can import that. Hit save, and there we go. Now in our onboarding.dart file, we will create a page view widget, and this page view widget will have the following three children. These are just static text fields, just to demonstrate that the page view is working. But we actually don't want to use a normal page view. This page view returns a list of widgets. What we want to use is the pageview.builder constructor. This essentially builds the widgets dynamically. So this will become apparent a bit later. But for now, all we need is to provide an item builder. So for this item builder, we get a context and the index, so the current page that we are returning. And then now I'm just dynamically saying this is page 1 or page 2 or page 3. So let's hit save. Okay, we need to center this text field. And there we go. Okay, we have page 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you can actually see we have an infinitely scrollable page view. So to define a number of pages, we can set the item count equal to 4. And now we will only have 4 pages, starting at page 0. Okay, now we can start with some of the UI layout. As you can see, I added this top banner. So what I did is I wrapped the page view in a stack, and at the bottom there is a container. So if we look at the changes, you can see these are the changes that I made. We are using a stack because we want the top banner to always be on top, regardless of which page we're on. Okay, so I added a couple of UI elements. As you can see, we have a row, and the children are this text field, fun with, and another text field called skip. And then I'm just doing some padding and custom text styles. So here you can see for this style, we're doing a text theme.title copy with. So we are copying the text theme that we specified in the styles.dart file, and then I'm specifying a color. I'm doing this because later in the app, we will dynamically set the color depending on which page we're on. And then for the main axis alignment, we're saying space between, and we're setting a baseline for the cross axis alignment. Note, if you set the baseline, you need to specify the text baseline as well. So what that does is it centers the text to be aligned horizontally or cross axis. Now we can start creating the actual pages that we will scroll. So the first thing that I did is created a new directory called components. These components is within the onboarding directory. So these are custom widgets that we will make that we will use within the onboarding screen. So the first component that I added is the onboard page. If we go to onboard page, this is currently a stateful widget that just returns a container with the color blue. So going back to onboarding, we can, instead of returning this, we can return the onboard page. Hit save, and there we have a page. Okay, next I made a static page. So as you can see, we currently have the same page that we can view over and over again. So nothing too special here. All that I did is define different text attributes with different paddings to do the layout. And then I'm also adding this image asset. And these are stacked in a column. So one thing I do want to do is I want to minimize this space a little bit. So we can go back to our onboarding file, and then for the height, instead of saying 100, we can say 70. And there we go. Next, what we will do is we will, instead of making this a static page, we will generate the content dynamically. So to better facilitate creating the content dynamically, I created two new folders, a data folder and a models folder. So the model contains a onboard page model. So this model represents what you see on the screen to the right. So it contains our caption, subhead, and then you can also see there are 3 different colors. The accent color and the next accent color we will make use of when we start animating the page transitions. And then for the data, I created a list of this onboard page model, and then in this list there are 4 different page models, and these are literally just the separate pages and their descriptions. Okay, next there's a couple of things that changed. So to get the content from the data model, for the onboard page, we will specify that we will need a page model. So in the constructor, we are just passing in this page model. And then instead of statically setting the image path, we will say widget.pageModel.imagePath, and then the same for the caption, subhead, and the description. So if we jump back to the onboarding page, we need to pass in that page model to the page that is created. So instead of specifying a fixed item count, we will get the onboard data. So from our onboard page data class, and then we will set the item count equal to the length. And then in the onboard page widget that we create, we can set the index for the onboard data. So this will return the relevant index for the page that we are on. So if we look at the screen now, you can see that the content is dynamically being created depending on the page that we are on. So now we can also set a unique color for each page, similar to how we set the text for each page. So if we look at the onboard page, you can see that instead of specifying a default black color, I am now specifying the color to be equal to that of the model's color. So we are saying the text should be equal to the accent color. And for some of them, we are specifying a width opacity of 0.8 and a width opacity 0.9. That is just to make the text look slightly more faded, to get a better text style. So if you look at the different pages, you can see that the colors are dynamically being changed. So if we go to onboard page, and instead of returning a fixed blue background, we can set the color to be equal to the widget.pageModel.primary color. And now each page has its own color. Next, I added this drawer that paints over all of the widgets below it. So to achieve that, I wrapped the original container in a stack. So if we go to the change file, you can see we have a stack now. And at the bottom of the stack, I am also setting giving it a new widget, and I'm aligning that widget to be center right. And it's just a container, and this container expands the entire field from top to bottom, and it has a width of 50. And at the bottom, there's another align widget, and that is the icon button. And this icon button on pressed will call the next button pressed function, which I specified at the top. So if we hit this, you can see we get a console.log that says button pressed. Now we will add a custom paint to the drawer that we created. So to do that, we wrap the container in a custom paint, and then I am specifying a custom painter that I made. I will show you the code now. So to show you an example first, if we specify the colors again for the container and we set this back to green, you will see that it paints over this custom paint widget. So that's obviously not what we want, so we want to remove that. And then for the custom paint widget, you need to provide a painter. If we jump to the painter, this is the file that you will see. To create your own painter, you extend custom painter, and then you have to override two methods, the paint method and the should repaint. The should repaint is an optimization method. So for our purposes, we are just going to return true. But if you do want to optimize it, you should do some checks to see when the painter should repaint. So if we go and look at what we are importing, we require that the user provide a curve color, and then based on that curve color, we are creating a paint object. And this paint object we will use within the paint method, and the paint method receives a canvas and a size. So this canvas is exactly that. That is where the painting will happen. So our canvas size is the size of our widget, that green draw widget that we originally had. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to initialize a path variable, and then we want to move that path variable by 35 points to the right. So originally the green container started here, we want to move it 35 points to the right, and then we want to start drawing these curves. So as an example, I will remove two of these curves, and then you can see this is the first original curve, and then it just creating a line to the end of the container, and then we are closing the path. So we want three separate Bezier curves, and a Bezier curve is defined by a starting point, an end point, and then two control points. And these control points essentially define the curve. I'm not going to go into more detail than that. There's a lot of resources online if you want to follow up on that. But if you've ever used a program like Photoshop or a vector illustration program, you've come across Bezier curves, because there you specify a curve, and those curves are defined by a mathematical operation that is called a Bezier curve. So after we've created the three Bezier curves, all we need to do is create a line to the bottom right, so the size.width and the size.height of the container, and then another line to the size.width and then the 0 point of the container. That will be at the top right. And then we do a path.close, meaning from this point it closes all the way back to the original starting point, which was this. And then we can draw the path with this canvas.drawPath method, and we supply the paint. And next I set up the button to actually do swipes when we click it. So instead of swiping, we can just click this button and then it does a page transition. So we did that by, let's look at the changed file. Okay, so in the onboarding widget, we say that we are going to create a page controller, and in the page view builder, we pass in this page controller. So this controller, we also pass into our onboard page. So if we go to our onboard page, you can see that we have this page controller and that we have this required attribute called page controller. And then in the next button pressed, we specify a next page. And then in this parameter, we can specify the duration and the animation type. So the animation that I gave it is a fast linear to slow ease in. So this says it's similar to animating pages on iOS. One thing we can also do back on the onboarding page, on onboarding widget, we can give it a scroll. We can give it a physics, and we can say a never scrollable scroll physics. And then if we go back to our app, we can no longer scroll using a swipe. We can only scroll using this button. And it's currently not scrolling further because we reached the end. So if we do a hot restart, we cannot scroll, but we can hit the button to transition between the pages. Okay, now it is the fun part. I started adding some of the animation. So if we click the page transition, you can see that the hero animation, there's a little bit of a bounce in, as you can see. I've also disabled the scroll physics being never scrollable, just for testing purposes, so we can actually get back to previous pages. So looking at the code, if we look at the differences, the first thing to note is that we are extending with single ticker provider state mixin. So that is for our animation. If we increase the screen size, it'll be easier to see. So we are creating an animation controller and then an animation of type double called hero animation. And then in the init state, we are initting the animation controller, giving it a duration of 750. And for the hero animation, we are providing a tween starting at -40 and then ending at 0. Being -40 would be on the left side, jumping in back to the right. And then we're calling animate on that. And we're giving a curved animation with a curve of bounce out. That's what gives that bounce effect. And then in the init state, we are calling animation controller.forward. So we are calling it in the init state because we wanted to essentially start the animation as soon as the page is created. So at this stage, when the page is created, you can see it starts the animation. So if we swipe, there it starts the animation. And then remember to dispose of the animation controller, calling override dispose. And then the actual animation happens in the animated builder. In this animated builder, we are giving the animation property of hero animation, and then we are overriding the builder, and we are doing a transform.translate. So we are taking the hero animation.value and then offsetting on the x-axis. And that is essentially that. Back on the onboarding screen, all I did is disable the never scrollable physics. I continued the animation to also add the spring effect for this right-hand navigation, this squiggly line. So if we click next, you can see now it bounces in along with the year animation. So slightly different. We jump to the differences. As you can see, I added another animation of type double called border animation, and slightly different attributes for the beginning and the end. And then I also wrapped that align widget, that right aligned navigation drawer, with an animated builder over the custom paint. And then for the container that gets painted, I'm specifying that the width should be equal to the border animation.value. So essentially it will increase or decrease as the animation progresses. And that was that. The next and almost last thing that we need to do is we need to find a solution that will enable us to get access to the page data's color properties, because we want to set the title, the banner, the fun width, and the skip color to be equal to the accent color that is currently showing on the screen. So we need to find a way that we can lift the onboard page color data up to the onboarding widget. So in the builder, we do have access to the onboard page onboard data, but calling setState within a build function is not allowed within Flutter. So we will explore a way that we can lift the state up, and I will be using the provider state management solution, but technically you can use any state management that you would want to use. So let me demonstrate how I achieve this. So as you can see now, the title changes, or the title color changes as we go to the different screens, and it reflects the accent color that is available. Very easy to do with the provider widget. So the first thing that I did is I created a new directory called providers, and within that a color provider. And this color provider makes use of the provider package. So if we go to our files and then go to pubsec.yaml, you can see that I added a dependency for the provider package. And then what this does is we specified a class called color provider that extends with change notifier. And here we are setting the default color to the data class that we specified to be equal to the first list item accent color. And then we are specifying a get, so we can get the color and set the color. So every time we set the color, we will also call notify listeners. So any widget that subscribes to this color provider will get notified when the color does change. And then we need to make this color provider essentially available to all of the widgets within our widget tree. So a good place to do that is at the topmost widget that extends both the screen, the onboarding screen, and the onboard page. So here I'm setting it in the main.dart. You can see I wrapped the onboarding page with a change notifier provider. And then I am giving it a builder, and this builder essentially initializes the color provider. And then within the onboarding screen, let's look at the differences. You can see I'm doing some additional imports, and then I'm calling color provider of, and I'm specifying the type as color provider, and then I'm giving it the context. This is within the build function. And then down here, instead of giving it a default black color, we are now saying color provider dot color. And then in the onboarding page, we are calling the provider of, and then we're setting the color equal to the next accent color. That is the third color attribute that we specified in our page model data. So when the next button is pressed, it will set the color equal to the next page's accent color, essentially. And that is all we need for this solution to work. So a couple of errors. If we scroll, you can see it's not changing the colors. That is because it's only changing the colors if we hit next. And also at the final page, if we hit next again, there's nothing else. It will set it to blue, which was the color we specified. But yeah, that is just general debugging we can do later. And the final bit of magic that we are going to add is this page view indicator at the bottom. As you can see, I've already added it. So as we navigate between the pages, it just gives a page indication to tell us where we currently are. I'm not going to incorporate the skip and the final thing, but essentially, like, if you're finished with this onboarding screen, you would jump to the main screen in your app or the login screen or whatever. But for the purposes of this video, I don't see the point in doing that. So yeah, for the page view indicator, after I started creating it, I saw online that there are packages that you can just import and have an indicator ready. Originally, I was planning something different and then decided not to do it. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing what I did for this indicator, you can look at the source code. I won't explain it now, but yeah, I'm essentially just drawing a bigger circle with the with a custom painter, depending on what page we are on, and then drawing 3 smaller ones if we're not on that page, and then also specifying the color using the color provider that we created. And yeah, that is that. We have a working app. We can do one more hot restart and see that it is working. The animation is a bit slow, mostly because of the emulator being a bit slow or a bit janky. But yeah, I think it was a pretty involved app to make. There was a couple of times I stumbled. I learned a thing or two designing this myself, and yeah, it was fun. I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, cheers.